Hey everybody, last week we talked about the Great Reset and in particular the transhumanism component. And this I think is new territory for a lot of people. People who just kind of go to work and try to live their lives, don't really spend a lot of time thinking about these things. Today we are joined by somebody who does spend a lot of time thinking about these things. His name is Dr. Miklos Lukacs de Pereny, and he is a research professor in science and technology at the University of San Martin de Porres in Lima, Peru. He's got his PhD from the University of Manchester. He lives in the United Kingdom now, and he kind of studies the intersection of science and technology and policy, and has looked into this Great Reset and the transhumanism. Dr. Miklos, thank you very, very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you for the opportunity.
Excellent. And so tell us a little bit about what you know on this Great Reset and how it relates to the transhumanism, which is the term that I think for a lot of people is new. So if you would maybe give a little background also on what is transhumanism.
Yes. Well, if you make the connection straight from Great Reset to transhumanism, it looks very far-fetched for most of the people. So we have to provide some context. The idea came, the Eureka moment came to me in April 2016. 2 years before, I had my first encounter with transhumanism, but I didn't pay much attention because I didn't find it, very feasible. It looked more like science fiction. To put into context, transhumanism, it's an ideology, but it's also a cultural movement that, as they define it exactly, is the enhancement of human capabilities, let's say intellectual, cognitive, physical, and even moral, through the application of technologies. So they set up three main objectives, which they call super longevity. So extending our lifespan to a point where we can become even immortal. Super intelligence, where they just say we can enhance ourselves with technologies like artificial intelligence or even hardware to improve our capabilities. Then some even say that we can reach a moment where we can upload our thoughts into a collective cloud. So imagine the questions of privacy and all these kinds of things. And then they talk about super well-being. So they say there's no point on being super, living a long life and being super intelligent if our quality of life is not going to be so good. So British philosopher David Pearce, who was the founder of the first World Transhumanist Association in 1998, and whom I have interviewed, by the way, he poses this hedonistic imperative. We have to get tired of living with suffering. So in his abolitionist project, he looks forward to ending suffering. And this we can do through genetic manipulation. So as you see, this ideology of enhancement, super longevity, super intelligence, super well-being. So that was my first encounter in 2014. As you can imagine, those years I was like, well, this sounds a little bit like science fiction. But something struck me in April 2016. I was already working in Peru for ESAN, which is a leading business school in Latin America. And the fourth industrial revolution concept came back to me. It was the first time I came in. And the fourth industrial revolution, which was a term supposedly coined by Klaus Schwab, the executive director of the World Economic Forum, was a very, very, disturbing definition, because it said the fourth industrial revolution can be defined as the fusion of biological, technological, and digital systems. So if you put those words in a different context, they are plain straightforward transhumanism. When you fuse yourself, or when you fuse biological systems with devices and with digital information systems, that's a whole new category of beings. And that's when I started to get struck by this, especially on the efforts that the World Economic Forum and the typical global elite platforms, let's say United Nations, the media, academia, NGOs, the progressive circuit, started to push up this concept very, very strongly. And even they started to work in different countries at the global level to implement this as policy. So then you say, okay, if they are coming up with this idea of fusion and they implement it at policy levels, at the highest levels of government, well, this is basically transhumanism turned into global public policy. That's how I came to the ideas. And My initial hypothesis, because as a researcher you have to set up hypotheses, you cannot claim things are like this until you are proven or disproven. Well, my hypothesis continue to be proven by facts. So it is quite disturbing what is going on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for a lot of people who aren't familiar with this, a lot of this just sounds unbelievable. And yet, as we showed in a recent program, these people are talking about this. Klaus Schwab has said from stages in front of large audiences and videos that are posted for everyone to see that we are going to be fusing our biological and our digital identities through technology. Just recently, Elon Musk announced that he was searching for volunteers to have a microchip implanted in their brain. He says, we're going to start with the human experiments, and eventually this will become more widespread. So I want to talk, first of all, about the technology. Where are we in terms of the technology? Are these things realistic? Is this something that we might see in our lifetime? Again, I think your average person doesn't think about these things, and so we really don't know where the technology is. But is it feasible for a microchip, for example, to be fused into somebody's brain that would be able to interact with technology?
Well, is it technically feasible at this point, or many things? Yes, many things are technically feasible. But I would group, for a matter of clarity, these technologies in the so-called convergent technologies, because at some point they were created for different purposes, but they start to converge for similar applications. So, for example, one of the major ones is artificial intelligence, which is all over the place. If they don't believe me that of what an artificial intelligence system can do, they can check the surveillance state in China. That's artificial intelligence applied in not so many positive terms. So that's a fact. It's not a hypothesis. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a factual thing. So you have artificial intelligence, which is the replication or simulation of human intelligence by machines through statistical models or statistical methods called algorithms. So algorithms basically process what is so-called big data. That's where big data comes in. And then you start making connections with surveillance and all these things. So algorithms, you have several types of algorithms and several types of training of those algorithms. There are algorithms that do not need any human programming. They are just laid out and they just start learning by themselves as soon as you input data. And the point is that these algorithms can make decisions after this learning process. So the more that data you input, the more accurate the algorithm becomes. So what kinds of applications do you have in artificial intelligence? Many. So facial recognition, for example, through patterns and dots in your face. So you have speech language or natural language processing, speech recognition, text to text, voice to text, it's especially translators. You have drones. You have automotive, autonomous vehicles, financial technology, fintech. You have algorithmic traders now. You don't have people, rushing Wall Street asking for, betting for for stocks. Algorithms can do that now, and this is factual technology also. So that's one side. Then you can have biotechnology, genomics, bioengineering, all these within biological synthesis. And there's a very important technique called CRISPR-Cas9. Actually, the chemistry Nobel Prize of this year was given to Jennifer Doudna from Berkeley and Emmanuel Charpentier from France, because they discovered, they didn't discover, they applied the technique for the first time. And what you can do with this CRISPR technique, it's a GPS with scissors. It can find exactly what kind of gene you are looking for. It can replace it. It cuts it, and you can replace it with good genes. So experiments in humans are forbidden so far. There was a case in China, which was condemned internationally, of a Chinese scientist that applied CRISPR to twins in China for making them immune to HIV or something like that. But so you can have that, but most of the experiments have been conducted in plants, in insects, in small mammals. So is it technically possible to, for example, cure diseases that are caused by one gene? Yes, it is possible. You can find many applications, for example, for cancer research. So in therapeutics, you have a lot of issues. But then you can think of the negative sides of it. So people are talking about editing babies, so babies by design, or mixing genes from different species. That's very dangerous, chimeras, or you name it. You have a range of applications that can go wrong. Then you have, well, actually in China, there was a news published by the Russia Today, I think 3 or 4 days ago, where the Chinese are already experimenting with soldiers. I don't know how true that news is, but trying to make super soldiers, more resistant. Do I think that would be possible? Yes, I think. Under the Chinese government, many things are possible. So you have that. And then you have nanotechnology, nanotech, which is working with materials at the atomic and the molecular level. So basically, you can start up building new materials that are inexistent in science. So you, for example, can combine molecules from organic chemistry, carbon-based molecules, life-based molecules with inorganic chemistry molecules. And you can come up with a range of new materials, living organisms. So the applications are also very, very widespread. You have robotics. In this case, for example, Boston Dynamics is a very important company in the world. It's US based, and it works closely with DARPA, the Defense Research Department of the US government, on building robots. So you can apply robots with artificial intelligence. So you have autonomous robots, for example. That's an example of converging technologies. Prosthetics is also an important field. Quantum computing, 3D printing, etc. So those are the converging technologies. If you ask me, state of the art or the technological frontier, many things at this point are technologically possible. They are not applied yet because there are legal and moral restrictions, although morality is being undermined for the same purposes, because we're trying to use, we're trying to, well, not we, they are trying to instrumentalize human beings to open this, flood for all these applications. But yes, it is possible. That's why it's not a joke anymore. It's not science fiction anymore. It's a reality.
Yeah, a lot of that is very concerning. And so when it comes to policy and regulation, what does the policy field look like right now? I guess it's on a national level at this point, but is the regulation keeping up with the technological development? I mean, do policymakers even understand these things? Can they regulate and control something that they don't understand, or is the technology moving too quickly? And where do you think should it go, considering the ethical concerns? And then, of course, there's the other factor to consider. If, for example, the U.S. government were to ban it and the communist Chinese government keeps developing incredible things, would that put us at a disadvantage militarily? Were a conflict to break out? So what do you think in terms of the policy realm? What should be happening with these technologies and these new frontiers in genetic engineering and other things?
Well, it's a very, very wide question. I will try to address the most important aspects. The first thing is that we have already opened a Pandora box. That's number one. So some nasty things I foresee happening. That's for sure. Unfortunately, the technology goes way faster than legal discussions or ethical discussions. You see the development of these technologies, artificial intelligence, especially since 2014, very, very fast. And we are just starting to show up in academia, for example, programs dealing with artificial intelligence ethics. Actually, the first program in the UK has been opened 2 days ago by the University of Cambridge. So dealing with ethical issues 6 years after the advancements of this technology. The same happens with bioethics. Bioethics is going to be a crucial aspect. And if you allow me here for a more conceptual aspect, at this point, I would say there are legal restrictions and moral restrictions, but I would like to summarize the discussion, and of course this will leave many questions open, but I think this is a fundamental point. The push for abortion is crucial. That's the main battle of all. And people do not understand how crucial this is, because they are thinking just in utilitarian and materialistic terms. And this view of progress in utilitarian, materialistic, and relativist terms is very dangerous. When you approve abortion, what happens is that you transform a human being as a subject with rights and duties to an object of experimentation, of manipulation, of commercialization. They want evidence. Well, evidence, abortion itself, that the disposal of human beings. And then if you ask about buying people, yes, when gay couples go and order a company to manufacture a baby for them, commercializing, it has a market value, it has a logistics involved. If they bring them from India or from these surrogate mother factories, It is so this is the crucial point. Once you break that line and you combine it with this Pandora box that has already been opened, which is pushed forward by organizations like the World Economic Forum, the media, academia, and governments, especially that's the case in the States. That's why I'm so concerned about this Biden thing, because it's going to open the doors widely for these things to happen. Then there's, I think, a point of no return, or if there's a return, it's going to be at the cost of many, many lives and the suffering of millions of people. So I think there's right now, I would say it's like a very tense calmness right now. We're tensely calmed. People are just dealing with the confinements, lockdowns, and the economic situation, the social situation, but I think some major things are going to happen soon in the future, and I cannot, of course, I do not read the future, but I'm very concerned of what comes next with this kind of technologies, the political agendas that are being pushed, censorship, to avoid any kind of counterattack to the dominant narratives, limited freedoms, absolute instrumentalization of humanity or human beings, the vast majority of them. It's not very promising.
Yeah, I agree. And the more I hear you talk, the more it gets really concerning. And I think a Pandora's box is a good way to put it. I want to talk a little bit about the moral questions, the ethical questions. What are some of the concerns with, for example, technologically upgrading a person? Hypothetically now they're talking about these implants that you mentioned earlier, super well-being, super longevity, being able to maybe improve our brain processes. Do you have concerns about that? What are the concerns? And also with the genetic engineering, with this thing of designer babies, for example. I've seen some of the literature on this. Hey, if you want a baby with brown eyes, we can insert some DNA here. We can basically manufacture the baby to order. Are we moving into kind of a nightmare scenario? And what do we do to stop it? What are the concerns? And is there any way to kind of put the brakes on this stuff?
Well, where are we moving forward? I think in the case of, let's say, all these manipulations, and as I said, if once you enter into that realm of manipulation, especially people with a lot of money, the ones who are developing these technologies, because then again, if you make the connection, and that's why I talk about the Great Reset as part of this, but in not a direct link, you start making the connections of who are the ones who own the technologies, who develop the technologies, and all the roads take us to Rome again. This is a conspiracy theory, but you always see the usual suspects, always the same. They develop them, and if they are not involved in AI, they are investing heavily in biotech companies, in nanotech companies. This is the realm of the field of investment for the very few, the very rich. You will see investment funds, investment banks, the elite, as you call it. The elite is literally buying all these enterprises. Now, the tricky thing here is when you read about transhumanism, they talk about enhancement. They are going to improve. That's their will. They're willing to improve us. But there's an act of faith there. These people are funny because they are atheists, and many are anti-Christians or anti-religious, and they criticize Christians or people of faith, and they're saying, oh, you believe in these ghosts and little angels and all these unicorns, and that's silly. But then you start dealing with, well, they say we are going to improve the human experience. But they are not improving anything. It's a tricky word. What they are doing is they are modifying the human being. They are not improving it. And that modification, which is a precise term, can be for good or for bad. Now, if they have a view that this will be for good in areas where plenty of research is still missing and there's plenty of bad science going on, then you say, well, who are the faithful here? Who are the faithful of not science, but bad science? Who are the faithful of scientism, the faith in science, where you think that science is going to have all the answers for all your questions, which is an absurdity, by the way. That's the problem. And then you think, if, for example, they start messing with, let's say in biotech, to put an example, if they start messing with germinal cells, sperms and eggs or zygotes, which they are going to replicate those characteristics to the following line. You can create butterfly effects that you don't know how they will. At the end, nature is going to pay back. That's the point. And these people, these desires for taming nature have been always present in humanity. Since epics like Gilgamesh, you can talk about Icarus. It has always been there. This desire of man to overcome its limitations. But nature has always paid back and corrected all these distortions. And this time, these people who clearly have not read history, they think they have reached finally a point where they can overcome nature, where they can tame nature, where they can transform Homo sapiens into Homo Deus. Not all of us, of course, them, the ones who own the technology. They will be the gods. But they don't see that all these experiments, secular experiments, science or bad science-based experiments are already replicated in history. So you have the Soviet Empire, you have the Nazi regime, you have Mao Communist China, you have the French Revolution with the Jacobins. So history has provided plenty of examples where people, when some messianic individuals thinking that they have the power to behave like God, and they think finally we have arrived to a point where we can dominate nature, history will prove them wrong again, because nature and the universe and the creation is so much more complex than the ego and the arrogance of these individuals. So I don't know what's going to happen. Nasty things are going to happen, but I hope we can control, at least to create awareness among people. That's my job. That's what I do in my humble contribution, but I'm trying to do my best.
Yeah, it's incredible times. My last question to you is, somebody who's just an average person, they just go to work and they just want to feed their family and, maybe enjoy the weekend. What do you do with all this? Should people be active in the political sphere? Should people just be reading up on this? Do we need to start making personal decisions? Thinking about what's going to happen when they try to, upgrade humanity. What would you recommend just for an average person just trying to get by in this crazy world?
Well, the first thing for sure is to inform themselves. You cannot fight a proper fight if you don't know what you are fighting against. So first thing, do your research, do your homework, take some time. It takes time to learn these technologies and to see what the applications are. Read outlets like The Economist, because they are telling you what they want to do in the future. It's not for the pleasure of reading it. I'm subscribed, but I actually dislike most of the content, but I have to read what they are thinking. So go to the World Economic Forum's, register into the World Economic Forum's Fourth Industrial Revolution website. They have all these fancy, and you will start, when you start translating the text into the factual objectives, that's when you have reached a place of mastery, because you can translate the shiny, sugary titles into what really things are. That's number one. Number two, check out the education of your kids. Take care of your kids with the most power you can take care of them. And if you allow me quickly, so you already have pre or proto-transhumanisms, because at the end I told you what you're looking is to relativize the human being, to make it an instrument, an object, something which you can experiment with, like clay. Then you think of, for example, all these trans phenomena that we are experiencing now. So transgender, trans age, trans species, trans whatever, all these
Race.
transracial, like Pocahontas and all these people. Okay. You start thinking of that. Those are proto or pre-transhumanisms. Why? Because they deny the evident truths provided by nature, provided by anatomy, genetics, biology, physiology, and all these psychological, physical elements that you are provided with, self-evident truths that are denied. And it's the beginning of where people try to, modify their nature, and they just have to go through very, very dramatic processes. Like, for example, hormone therapies, which are terrible, which generate cancer. Even, that the rates of cancer in people who have gone through those hormone therapies is much higher. Where you have psychological problems, where you have dysfunctional families, fractured families. check out what kind of education your kids are receiving. So for example, if you see the gender unicorn in the school curricula, well, hello, just get together and say, no, we are not teaching this crap to our kids. And this is not, and I want to make this very clear because, of course, and it won't matter at some point because the critics will always criticize you and they say, oh, you're a misogynist, you are a transphobic or a homophobic. No, I'm not. I actually hope for the well-being of every single human being in this planet, whatever their sexual condition, psychological, economic, so I don't care. I've never judged people based on their, on their looks or whatever. I've always judged them in terms of their qualities and values. But that doesn't mean that one has to close their eyes in the name of a fake tolerance and to accept all these things that at the end will affect them, not only us, but also them. At the end, all of us are victims of these twisted, twisted teachings and twisted philosophies that are coming in the name of progress, in the name of a very utilitarian and materialistic progress, as I said. So take care of your kids, organize yourselves, and that's what I could say.
Wow, you've given us a lot to think about. It's a huge topic, and I know we're only just scratching the surface. Doctor, where can people follow your work? Do you have a website, a social media profile? Is there any place where people can follow what you're doing and the important research you're coming up with?
Yes, well, I am mostly based on YouTube. My YouTube channel has my name, Miklos Lukacs. My research output has not been so prolific because of the complexity of the subjects that I'm studying. I don't want to publish nonsense for the sake of publishing, as it happens today. You just publish, oh, I completed my 2 points and now I'm a scientist. And with all these peer review processes that are and this pronoun integrity, and I'm fed up of academic research. It's just nonsense. I prefer to go to as a popular, scientist or whatever. If my critics want to call me conspiracy theorist, I really don't care because I know where it comes from. So if they want to prove that I'm a conspiracy theorist, they can invite me for debates, and I will happily show who is the most capable. So I really don't care. But mostly through my YouTube channel. And I am in the process I'm writing a book actually right now about putting all these ideas together, which I think will be ready by the end of the first semester of next year.
Phenomenal. Well, we will be in touch. We'd love to talk to you about your book. And thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. And hopefully we'll chat again in the very near future. Folks, you heard it here. I know it's a lot to think about. It's certainly an uncomfortable subject. I'm sitting here squirming in my seat while he's talking because these things, they're horrible to think about, but they are reality. This is what the elites are working on. You won't probably see it on the nightly news. You won't see it on the front page of your local paper, but these things are happening now, and we need to start thinking about them now. That, once again, was Dr. Miklos Lukacs de Pereny. He is a research professor of science and technology at the University of San Martín de Porres in Peru, and just a lot to think about, folks. So please go check out his YouTube page. Share this one out there. You're not going to hear this kind of stuff in a lot of places, so please help get the word out. This is a serious issue. It needs serious consideration by serious people everywhere. Thanks again, and God bless you all.
If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, hit like, hit that little bell so that you'll be notified whenever we post new videos. And also, please make sure to share this video with your friends. Email is a great way to do it. Remember, there are powerful forces working to steal our freedom and destroy our country. We need to work together, expose those behind the deep state. Otherwise, you can kiss your liberties goodbye.